My favourite bits of handheld equipment to use in a mat class. Hey gang, it's Joachim, Pilates teacher, and I'm here to talk about my favourite pieces of handheld equipment that you can use in the mat class. Of course you can use them in the Apparatus studio as well. I can easily do an hour-and-a-half workshop showing you all the exercises. There are thousands that you can do on any of these bits of kit. Come and talk to me at a workshop, or let's book a one-to-one and we can go through anything you want. That's not what this video is about. This video is just recommending what we normally use in my studio. The thing about all of these bits of handheld equipment is that they aren't necessarily Joseph Pilates designed bits of kit. That's not to say that if they were around at his time, he wouldn't have found a use for them. And we can certainly apply regular matwork Pilates exercises and even some apparatus exercises to the handheld equipment. So it makes you much more versatile, keeps it much more interesting for you as a teacher, keeps it much more interesting for the clients. You could have two people doing the same exercise, working side by side with or without the kit. Now I don't always use these every single time. That's really good if you're doing a one-off workshop or a half a day and you're showing people this is the cool stuff that you can do with Pilates. But if you're seeing the same people week after week, it's overload and you spend too much time going from one piece of kit to the next. I find it is nice to use one piece of equipment one day. The next week we'll move on to the next piece of kit, so on and so forth, until we end up having done the full series throughout a 6 or 7 week block. Clearly, you want to have a mat. I've got a whole other video talking about what is the best type of mat for Pilates. But as well as your mat, you want to have thin head cushions. Sometimes people need 2, sometimes 3. So it's worth having more head cushions than you have mats so that you can double them up. Ideally, we should be working with no head cushion. The neck should be so flexible and have such capacity that we can lie flat on a hard surface. But for most modern people, certainly those that are coming to Pilates classes in the UK, they'll often need 1, maybe 2 of these head cushions, so that's worth thinking about. You can get a zippered case so that you can wash them in between every use, which is really handy. Let's get straight into it. In no particular order, with the foam roller. Foam roller is a favorite within the fitness industry for rolling out tight and sore muscles. It's not a Pilates piece of equipment, designed by Feldenkrais, often called the Feldenkrais roll. Hard piece of foam. This one is made by Fitness Mad. It's a fine piece of kit. We've had these ones in the studio for a few years, but personally I find this one to be too hard. So try them out. You want firm, but not too firm. These are a little bit uncomfortable. I don't mind, because my clients are here to do a workout, not to lounge around. So that's fine, but a little bit more give would be nice. The half roller, these ones that I have here, are more forgiving and they would be a much nicer thing to lie on if that's what you're trying to give your clients. Half roller is really good because you can lie on a flat surface and still be wobbly, or you can put the flat surface down and lie on top of it and you're essentially half as unstable on the half roller as you are on the full roller. Lolita uses this as part of her teacher training course. There are some great places within the Apparatus repertoire where we could use this really nicely, but we're talking mostly about mat. You can lie on your back on it. You can lie on your front on it. You can lie sideways on it. You can stand. I don't recommend letting clients stand unaided on the foam roller because we had a client fall off one and break her arm. Now she went into the studio before we had started class, so she was doing it on her own unsupervised. Never a good thing, but these things, when you fall off them, you have nowhere to go. So they are super dangerous if you're going to go standing on them. But standing on them up against the bar, pretty cool. You can do 4-point kneeling. You can do 4-point kneeling with a foam roller underneath the ankles. You can do 4-point kneeling with a foam roller underneath the hands. You can be on 2 foam rollers at the same time. T-shaping with a foam roller is pretty cool. Foam rollers in the air like you just don't care. You can get 10 of these into the back of a small car really easily, and they totally ramp up your capacity for teaching classes. All of your basic lying on your back, leg lifts, arm lifts, those sorts of things are made so much harder for being on top of the foam roller because you're unstable. And that instability just ties really nicely in with the Pilates concept, because when we're on the apparatus, we're trying to destabilize the body in many ways already. also a lot of fun. Video. Up next, Magic Circle. Now the Magic Circle was designed by Joseph Pilates. What's the magic about the Magic Circle? Well, the main magic is that clients, having had a Magic Circle class, still come back to you the next week because this thing is brutal. In the census from Joseph Pilates' hometown, Joseph Pilates was registered as a brewer. So he had exposure to barrels. Clearly, this is the ring off a barrel with a couple of wooden, in his time, handles put onto the outside to create some resistance. It's a circular spring, similar to the original kind of car springs, the stacked arcs of steel that sat on top of each other to stop impact of a car on the road. The springs that we have on an apparatus are coiled springs that pull apart. The Magic Circle can be pulled apart, but we tend to use it to squeeze, which ties really nicely in with what we do with Pilates generally. We're usually trying to draw things together. There are different sizes of Magic Circle. This is just a standard one. You can get small mini ones and they're useful for between the legs, but I only have these ones in the studio because they're just nicely designed, roughly the size of a human being. If I have my arms out in front, then my arms are in line with my body. Overhead, my hands are in line with my shoulders perfectly neatly. I like the Magic Circles with a rubber sheath over the metal spring part of the circle. You can get them with just the basic metal and they're fine, but my gentle little hands like something soft to hold on to. These things are going to go between your knees or outside your knees, generally quite tender areas, so it's worth having good padding on the outside and on the inside of the hand. It's super useful between the hands, in front, behind, overhead, peekaboo, one-handed. All of the one-handed exercises mean that you can really see the difference of one side of the body compared to the other, and you can feel the core muscles working across the diagonal. You can also use them really nicely in conjunction with other apparatus in the Pilates studio. The next piece of kit, and this is my favorite of all of the small handheld bits of kit, just because it's so versatile. There are lots of different versions of small balls. There's the over ball, and other types of magic balls. You can see the different sizes. These are awesome. We'll talk about them in another video. These are great, but a little bit too small for me. The Triad Ball is the king of the small handheld ball. Now it is supposed to look insipid, deflated like this, because when you go to put pressure on it, that's when it becomes responsive. They're also really useful virtually deflated. There's plenty of air in here and it gives us all sorts of feedback, especially when we're lying on our back exploring the neutral spine. I often use the Triad Ball for a lot of exercises very similar to the Magic Circle, but there's an obvious difference between the Magic Circle and the Triad Ball. The experience that you get from using the Triad Ball over the Magic Circle is just much more three-dimensional, and that's really cool. We don't have very often the three-dimensionality within Pilates. It tends to be forwards and backwards, up and down, side to side, whereas here we get a circular action. You can use it standing, you can use it lying on your front, you can use it lying on your back, on your side. This is one of my favorites. In between your hands, under your hands, doing the hundreds. Also known as the physio ball, and in the UK very often known as the Pilates ball, because we spend so much time as mat work Pilates teachers on this piece of kit. It's not an original of Joseph Pilates, although if this technology was around when he was around, I'm sure he would have found a good use for them. It's worth getting a burst proof version. This one here is made by Ledragoma. It's a 75 centimeter size. When you size them, you want to make sure that you have a fair amount of resistance within the ball and that it creates a 90-degree angle at the knee and at the hip. You don't want it too big and you don't want it too small. This is the perfect type of ball to use at your desk to replace a computer chair. The great thing about the Swiss ball is that it's so large. It takes up a big space similar to the size of your body, and therefore you can use it to lever yourself up in all sorts of different cool positions. One time when Lolita was here, it was Swiss Ball Week, so all of our mat classes were using the Swiss ball for the entire class. She stood and looked in through the corridor and challenged me afterwards and said, "Why did you do an entire class on the Swiss ball?" My answer is, here in this country, that is what's expected. People expect to see a Swiss ball in a Pilates class. It's an awesome piece of kit, so why not? All of our regular mat work Pilates exercises can be done, or a variation of them can be done on the Swiss ball. Super effective, helpful, challenging, fun. So on the Swiss ball, you can bounce up and down. You can be in a plank position in different places. You can do extensions. All of your side kneeling, out in front, to the side, up and over. Probably the most versatile of your small handheld bits of kit is the Stretchy Band. I've got two versions here, a green light one and a black heavy one. It is literally just a band of stretchy rubber. You can buy them on rolls and you just cut them up yourself. I think that's the most cost-effective way of buying them. This one here is from Sissel. It came on a roll. I don't really care the resistance that you have in the Stretchy Band. I have some thin ones, some lighter ones, and I have some heavier ones because it's psychologically, it gives clients a feeling that they're working to their own level. But really, so long as they're a good length, roughly up to your chin from standing on the ground, then it doesn't matter what the resistance is. You are seldom going to go through a full range of motion, and you're seldom going to get the effect that you want with the Stretchy Band through a full range of motion for anyone anyway. Because you're working in a restricted, reduced range, it's just the fact that you've got some springy resistance that makes all the difference. So therefore, the strength doesn't make that much of a difference, but it's handy and it's nice to have a strong one and a light one, maybe one in the middle. The Stretchy Band is such a cool piece of kit because you can wear it in so many different ways. You can be Biggles, you can be the Karate Kid. Now the best thing about the Stretchy Band is that it replicates many of the experiences that we get in the Apparatus studio, where we work against springs that pull apart. The Stretchy Band pulls apart in that way, but also it stretches across the way or diagonally. So it has a bigger three-dimensional element to it than a regular metal spring on an Apparatus. The great thing about this type of resistance is that it complicates things. Normally we're just working against gravity, but the Stretchy Band allows us to experience a resistance in other planes. And that's really useful for confusing the body, making the core work hard, and tying all of the muscle engagements together. I love the Stretchy Band. I have an entire workshop called the Stretchy Band, the Apparatus Studio in your pocket. You fold this up, take it with you anywhere you want to go, and it is very, very useful. Of the favourite bits of kit that I use in my mat class. Tune in for more videos where I give more Pilates teaching.